It's great to go back through the files and find little. Every Sunday night, Ed Sullivan smiled at a lot of people. There was something that made him snap in 1955, though. When a young artist changed one song, Sullivan lost it and said things that were so shocking that people couldn't believe they were real. He used a racist slur that hurt his reputation, which he had worked hard to build. It almost got physical in the fight. They had to be kept apart by staff. No one talked about it for decades. The artist was not allowed to play again, but what he did that night on live TV changed the history of rock and roll. Ed Sullivan was born in Harlem, New York on September 28, 1901. He was one of pairs of twins. Daniel, his twin brother, was sick from birth and only lived a few months. It was only Ed who lived, and the loss of his twin brother cast a dark shadow over his youth. When he was a boy, he felt empty and sad, which shaped who he became. He was born to Peter and Elizabeth, who were both Irish and had a big family. Ed was the third of 8 kids, but only 5 made it past childhood. There was both life and sadness in the house at the same time. Another terrible thing happened when Ed was only 5 years old. His little sister died, which hurt the family even more. Elizabeth gave up because the pain was too much. She chose to move them from Harlem to Port Chester, a small town north of the city. Port Chester was less busy and more peaceful. They thought the change would help them get better, but Ed's grief never really went away. Ed learned how to deal with sadness when he was a little boy. Ed lived through all of this, and people often called him the Wonder Child. Irish and Jewish families lived next door to each other, so he grew up hearing music and cultures from all over the world. When cars took the place of horse-drawn wagons, Ed saw it all. He was one of 8 kids, but only 5 made it past childhood. Every day showed her how fragile life was. The most loving person in his family was his mother. It was a miracle for them to have him. There was always sadness in the house, but music helped. The Sullivan family sang around the piano, making the rooms very loud. They dealt with things by making music. That was something Ed would always do. He would still think about those early days, even when he was a famous TV host, and how a song could make hard things feel better. Ed also started to show that he needed to be in charge as he got older. During high school, he was very good at sports. He got 12 letters in sports from 1916 to 1919. He was tough as nails on the football field, a quick guard on the basketball court. In the sprints, a fast person. But as catcher and leader, he really shone in baseball. These games made him who he is today. They taught him how to be disciplined and how to be a leader. He also loved being in charge. Because Ed was captain, he told his team where to stand and how to play baseball. After that, he won championships and became well known. He felt like he was in charge in that job, which would help him even more in his work. When Ed was 17, the United States joined World War I. He ran away to Chicago to try to join the Navy. They sent him home because he was too young and didn't have any papers. That failed try showed how brave he was. It also made him go in a different direction. Ed had also learned how to write by that time. He wrote sports articles and was in charge of the school newspaper while he was there. After high school, the Port Chester Daily Item hired him right away. Ed loved every single one of the $1 articles they paid him for. His first job as a reporter was for the Hartford Post. He later worked for the New York Evening Mail, the Associated Press, and finally the New York Evening Graphic. He had always loved sports and writing, and they helped him get ready for a much bigger stage. Ed also learned how to be fair through sports. He didn't think much about playing with black kids when he was younger. It seemed right to him. He never thought it was strange when he went to Connecticut for games and saw teams with black players. That sense of fairness stuck with him. When Ed Sullivan had his own TV show later on, he would give black artists a chance when other hosts wouldn't. It seemed like a big step up for Ed Sullivan when he moved to the Hartford Post in 1919. Having worked at the Port Chester Daily Item, he was looking forward to new chances at a bigger paper. But that plan didn't work out at all right away. The Hartford Post went out of business in his first week on the job, so he didn't even have time to get used to his new surroundings. It was a strange and bad turn of events, especially since newspapers were doing so well at the time. Every paper doesn't close after a few days. Sullivan learned the hard way that the newspaper business could be very unstable and had to look for work all over again. Still, this didn't slow him down. Instead, it made him want to keep going even more. That quick and hard lesson made him strong and driven from a young age. After the Hartford Post went out of business, Sullivan was able to get a job as a sports writer at the New York Evening Mail, but that paper also stopped running in 1923. This was the start of a rough time when he went from failed newspaper to failing newspaper. From 1923 to 1927, he worked for the Leader, the Morning World, the Morning Telegraph, the New York Bulletin, and the Associated Press. He had to look for a new job every time one paper failed. It was hard to keep going and most people would have given up. Sullivan just wouldn't give up. Every job gave him a chance to learn new things and meet new people. Even though it was hard and risky, it showed how much he loved news. The time spent at the Associated Press was very important. People around the world looked up to the AP as one of the best news sources. Sullivan kept working as a freelancer for newspapers like the Philadelphia Bulletin and the Morning Telegraph, but working for the AP gave him national stories and more important tasks. From this time until 1927, Sullivan learned how to write about everything from sports to breaking news. He made a good name for himself as someone who could adapt and tell good stories, even though he was constantly changing jobs. He had shown that he was a good reporter by the time he left the AP. He took his next big step that same year. He became a sports writer for the New York Evening Graphic in 1927. It was big and flashy, and it was known for publishing shocking and bold tales. He did very well there and quickly moved up. He quickly became the sports editor, which was his first stable leadership position. His first meeting with Walter Winchell, one of the most famous news columnists of the time, was at the press. When Winchell left for the Daily Mirror in 1929, Sullivan took over as the Broadway writer for the newspaper. He learned about show business through that piece, which gave him a new kind of power. It was 1932 when the comic ended, but Sullivan was already well known at that point. He wrote a piece about Broadway for the New York Daily News in 1932. His well-known column Little Old New York started at that time. People checked it every day for 42 years until 1974. He wrote about Broadway shows, famous artists, and the behind-the-scenes lives of the city's biggest stars. People liked his voice a lot because it was clear, sharp, and always about what was going on. If Sullivan says something about someone, they become famous right away. People outside of New York could also read his piece, which was syndicated. Sullivan changed with the times every year as the entertainment business changed. That's what made him successful. Sullivan was also good at finding big stars. Little New York was more than just a place to talk. It was where up-and-coming actors and musicians got their big break. Before anyone else, Sullivan knew how to spot ability. A kind word in his piece could help someone get their first job. But if he didn't like someone, he might say something quickly that would hurt their image. Stars and directors read his column every morning because they knew that one line could make or break their show. Sullivan did more than just report the news. He was making it happen. Besides working at the newspaper, you could see him at all the big events and theater openers. Sullivan was always there when something happened, but New York's nightlife was also a battlefield. Sullivan opened a business at the well-known El Morocco Club. That became his temporary home base. Walt Winchell, his foe, was in the Stork Club across town. In these fancy places where movie stars and politicians spent the night, both men fought for respect. Everyone famous who came in was in the race. People who knew about Winchell's Stork Club knew about its strict door policy and exclusive crowd. People loved Sullivan's El Morocco because it was both glamorous and powerful. These two columnists were in charge of New York's nightlife, and everyone knew how competitive they were with each other. People all over the city talked about it a lot. People's reputations could be made or broken by what they did at either club. Sullivan wasn't happy with just writing either. He also decided to take over radio, just like Winchell. His first radio show, The Ed Sullivan Show on CBS, started in 1932. Big names like Jack Benny and George M. Cohan came on that show, which brought him new fans. In 1941, Sullivan hosted Ed Sullivan Variety. From 1943 to 1944, he hosted Ed Sullivan Entertains. And in 1946 he hosted Ed Sullivan's Pipelines. With each show more people heard his name. Radio worked great for him. It helped him reach more people and spread rumors about show business more quickly. As time went on, people learned to trust his voice. He could do more than just write, as shown by radio. CBS chose to take a big risk in 1948. Ed Sullivan was hired to host Toast of the Town, their new comedy show that airs on Sunday nights. Sullivan wrote a piece for a newspaper and had never worked on TV before. Marlo Lewis, a director at CBS, thought that Sullivan's simple style might work. It wasn't clear to Sullivan. "The things they say they will do are things I have already done," laughed. The very first show aired on June 20, 1948, and cost only $1.1775 to make. Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis were paid only $200 to be there. It scared the sponsors. Some executives thought he wasn't flashy enough, but William Paley, the boss of CBS, believed in him. Sullivan worked hard to get great people on the show, which became a hit and ran for more than 20 years. It wasn't easy to get that success. People didn't like him. They thought it was terrible how he spoke. Harriet Van Horn wrote that he didn't have any personality. Some people said he was stiff, awkward, and useless. Sullivan felt bad about it. He even sent Van Horn a short mean message one time, but people at home watched on. Alan King joked that Sullivan didn't do anything, but did it better than everyone else. He learned to deal with it. He let comedians pretend to be him. That made more people like him. People liked that he could make fun of himself. Fans kept coming back, even though reviewers made fun of it. The show became known for Sullivan's strange style. During the video, he looked stressed. He always had a hunched back. His voice was rough. A few people thought he had Bell's palsy. Time magazine said that his smile looked like someone sucking on a lemon. He wasn't sick though. A lot of people wrote to him and praised his bravery. Comedians copied the way he moved like a board. That helped him become well known. Sullivan never tried to change this picture. He took it in fact, because he was honest and funny, he became one of the most loved people in show business. The show had moved to a new place by 1953. 1697 Broadway is home to CBS Studio 50. The theater was old and was built in 1927. It was very fancy inside, with a Gothic roof and stained glass. It was hard to get cameras and other gear inside. Even the train that was close by had to be blocked so it wouldn't mess with the signal. Sullivan liked this stage a lot. In 1967, CBS changed the name to the Ed Sullivan Theater to honor its 20th year on the air. It was an honor for a TV star to get that. That building is still there today. In the end, David Letterman and Stephen Colbert would call it home, but most people remember it for Sullivan and all the famous musicians who played there. People still called it Toast of the Town at first. Sullivan thought this didn't praise him enough. People already thought it was his show. CBS changed the name to The Ed Sullivan Show on September 25, 1955. Sullivan cared about that. It showed he was one of the most powerful men on TV. After a year he would have Elvis Presley on the show. 60 million people watched Elvis. At the time, that was a TV record. Sullivan's fame would last forever thanks to his new name and that huge crowd. He wasn't always easy to work with though. In 1955, November 20th, Bo Diddley was not on stage. A big song by Tennessee Ernie Ford, 16 Tons, was heard him sing. In just 3 weeks that song had sold more than 1 million copies. Diddley was told by Sullivan to play it. Diddley probably agreed because he thought it would help his business. But he thought he had to do both when he saw cue cards that said Bo Diddley 16 Tons. He played his own song Bo Diddley instead of Bo Diddley on the radio. That choice led to one of the most rebellious TV scenes ever. The part that Diddley played was R&B. The fans went crazy when he played his own hit. Sullivan was very angry. People were moved by Diddley's raw energy and famous beat. A lot of Americans heard that catchy Bo Diddley beat for the first time. Rock and roll will never be the same. After those 2 minutes, he was mad when the cameras stopped rolling. He yelled at that kid. It was said by Diddley and other witnesses.